We're going to talk about arguments. No, we're not. Yes, we are. No, we are not. Yes, we are. No, we're not. Yes, we are. Sorry. I said at an early point in that arguments were the thing I look at the most. So it's well past time that we get in and actually start talking about arguments in more detail. What are they? What are the types? And what do we look for? Stay tuned to find out. We've been talking about arguments long enough to where we really should start defining our terms so we can get a little bit more in depth and get our understanding to be a little bit more precise. So, you want as good of a definition as we're possibly going to get? Well, at least right now? An argument is a reason or set of reasons given in support of an idea, action, or theory. Students often ask me, well, what's the difference between an opinion and an argument? Well, you support an argument. I can make the wildest, stupidest claim, and if I just leave it at that, it's an opinion. If I can come up with some level of support, it turns into an argument. Now, most people don't argue just for the heck of it. They don't argue because they need the jaw exercise. They tend to argue in pursuit of something. They're trying to accomplish something, or at the root, one could say, all arguments are an attempt to get at some level of truth. What that level of truth is, and what it takes to get there, is going to depend on the type of argument. So, let's talk about 3 types of arguments. The terms, a premise is a reason. A conclusion is what naturally comes out of that reason. A true premise plus a true premise equals a conclusion. True premise plus true premise equals conclusion. Something very definite. 1 plus 1 equals 2. Math, logic, these are all really much the realm of deductive arguments. They're absolute. You can come up with an answer which is 100% verifiably true. The problem in getting that precise is you're usually talking about something fairly narrow. I mean, math, that 2 plus 2 equals 4, it's not exactly a world-shaking conclusion, is it? Sometimes, though, you want to get at truths that are larger than 2 plus 2 equals 4. And you want to talk about, instead of what this person is doing, what this group is doing. And you can't make an overall statement which is going to be true as a deductive argument would be if you're talking about a large group. You know, I can say that people who watch comics are fun people. You're going to point out the 1 or 2 miserable people. There's always going to be exceptions, but we can still get to larger truths. We just have to do it with a little bit less certainty. True premise plus a true premise that equals a probably true conclusion about a larger topic. If I'm making an argument instead of about logic or math, if I'm dealing with a larger group, I want big conclusions, I've got more data, I have to infer meaning rather than just mathematically prove it. That's what an inductive argument is. Then we have the larger arguments, the world-disclosing arguments, which are arguments based on ontology and disclosure. Now, I know what you're asking yourself. What in the hell does ontology and disclosure mean? I'm glad you asked. Ontology is a big philosophy metaphysics word, but it's simple. A set of concepts and categories in a subject area or domain that shows their properties and the relationships between them. It's about the relationships between various parts. It can be physical parts, it can be metaphysical, stuff that's not physical, thoughts, attitudes. Good example of ontology is fashion, really. Buying one shirt does not make me a formal person. Putting stuff together in a particular pattern makes me look formal. Does it change who I am? No, but it presents this particular image. If I took this exact outfit and replaced the shoes with Converse All-Stars and a Mickey Mouse watch, it would very much undermine the whole look I was going through, because the whole look is dependent on a lot of different places, a lot of different things. If I wore red and purple striped pajama pants with this, it would pretty much undermine the efforts of everything else. The look you get is dependent on all these little bits of information, all these little things that you put together. That's ontology. Truth is related to all these little parts. The notion of disclosure is that meaning depends on context. If I say something in a court of law, it's different than if I say it to my cat. And it's true, we act differently in different places because our meaning operates on a completely different level. If I said something to you in class, it's not going to be the same thing I would say if I was trying to the same concept to my 9-year-old. Well-behaved women seldom make history. You know, that's a very big feminist studies quote. And it's a very serious quote, unless it's being used by someone trying to tell their boss while they were drunk and singing Judas Priest at the top of their lungs while at work. Context matters. So a world-disclosing argument is where it has something to do with the relationships between various parts, including physical and metaphysical, ontology, and it has something to do with the context, disclosure. And these are all attempts to get at bigger truth, larger truths, truths that have effects, wide-ranging effects. It is a world-disclosing argument. The idea is that you're trying to get to some big truth about the world. So let's go over examples of these three types of arguments. Deductive logic. Chopin and Eminem played either classical music or rap. Eminem plays rap. Therefore, what type of music does Chopin play? You guessed it, classical. If the premise 1 is true and the premise 2 is true, then the conclusion 3 has to be true. Does this give us a deeper understanding of something? It gives us a very precise understanding of something, but it is limited in its scope, because if you're proving something definitively, you have to impose certain limits on it to eliminate all those outliers, all those exceptions. If you want to deal with larger possible issues, you have inductive reasoning. Music from Chopin's time is generally considered classical music. Mikhail Dubrovsky played music about the same time as Chopin. Therefore, what kind of music did Mikhail Dubrovsky play? The thing is, we can't really 100% confirm that Mikhail Dubrovsky played classical music without actually experiencing the music. But we can get to be pretty sure if all the music around that time is classical and he was doing music at that time, then yeah, his music is probably classical. It gets us at something a little bit less precise, but it does give us the opportunity to get at something a little bit larger. World disclosing argument. Eminem is particularly popular with 10 to 16-year-old males. That's true. It's always been true. It's that way with Green Day, too. I went to a concert of theirs in '98, and it was dominated by 10 to 14-year-olds. I went to a concert of theirs in 2008, dominated by 10 to 14-year-olds. People have mostly appealed to a particular demographic. Eminem is particularly popular with 10 to 16-year-old males. I guess you grow out of it. Eminem's lyrics include homophobic and misogynistic language. It's a good enough fact. You can trace them in there. Therefore, Eminem is popular with 10 to 16-year-old males because his lyrics mirror their own narrow, homophobic, and misogynist, albeit inexperienced, view of the world. The certainty level has gone down, but the scope can go up as a result. And if we're trying to say something big about the world, that's just one of those things we're going to have to deal with. if we're going to get at larger truths, we have to give up a certain amount of precision. We have to change our scale. And that's what a world disclosing argument does. Let's talk about thesis statements and how you go about actually talking about this stuff. A good thesis statement will have 3 parts. The subject of analysis needs to be clear in the thesis statement so we know what specifically you're talking about. The claim, the thing you're attempting to prove, needs to be very clear so we know exactly what you're trying to do. The blueprint of reasons is telling me how you're doing it. The best thing to say about X is that it does Y because of 1, 2, and 3 is a good formula for a thesis statement. Subject of analysis does this because of these reasons. You put all those parts in a thesis statement, and then the reader can focus just on how your argument works as you go through things. Now, we talked to a certain extent about the peanut butter and jelly sandwich early on, so let's pull it up. The thesis we used was perfectly good for that. Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, the subject of analysis, are a lot more efficient of a choice than the BLT for travelers claim because they are affordable, tasty, and easily portable. Blueprint of reasons. I know what we're talking about, I know the argument we're making, and I got a good idea of the big points. And that's what a thesis sentence should do. Another example. I'm a big fan of the show Steven Universe. If you've seen it, then you have an idea of why. It's deeper than it should be. It tackles issues that you wouldn't expect a cartoon, particularly one that aired in 12-minute increments, to hit. The Steven Universe episode hit the diamond, subject of analysis. It's a specific subject of analysis because I'm not talking about the entire series. I'm talking about this one specific episode. What does it do? It directly argues for a greater acceptance of a wide range of personal interactions, claim, by presenting both the romantic relationship between Ruby and Sapphire and the platonic relationship between Peridot and Amethyst as more powerful and cohesive than the military order of the invading Ruby squad. It's a long claim, but it's a complex episode. And that's why I spell out all those points. And this is counter-hegemonic depiction of identity is what sets it apart from the typical adult cartoon, such as Family Guy. Statement of significance is that other part we can get in where we want to really get into explaining why this is a world-defining argument. Putting the statement of significance in there is a move that pushes your argument that much over the top. Perhaps the best way of thinking about the world disclosing argument is ultimately what's your point? What's your significance? We always want to be trying to make our writing do something important, affect some level of change. And the more our writing actually does that, the better off we're going to be. So think about the world disclosing argument in the sense of significance. It's got to have good significance. Also, keep in mind the parts of the thesis. At the very least, the subject of analysis and the critical claim are required. The blueprint of reasons serves a really good job in walking the reader through the argument so they're not surprised by anything that comes up. Plus, it just helps establish its scope. And if you put down the specific critical approach, then that is going to give another hint to your reader the framework you're going to bring to your subject. So, make it clear. Get everything sorted out right away. See you in the next video.